What's up guys, Freezy here. Before we get into today's video, I want to quickly talk about my sponsor LDplayer. I've been using their emulator to play Blue Archive for 9 months now, and I can say their emulator is the most consistent for me. There are some serious advantages to play Blue Archive on emulator, like more precise skill casting and faster load speed for more resets. Using emulator is just better if you want to be competitive in the boss raids. If you want to support this channel, you can download the emulator using my link below. Also make sure to get the 64-bit version because it runs Blue Archive much better. Now for today's video, it is a guide on pretty much all the important things to know in the early game. Things like the most efficient early game progressing route, some quick guide on crafting, shop, arena, and important game mechanics. There's lots of stuff to cover, so use timestamp to look for each topic. And let's start with the early game progression route. The early game in Blue Archive is fairly simple. Just clear stages until you get stuck, then level up through hard mode and EXP stage. There is no faster way to level up. The only way to level up is by spending AP. In the early game, level up students gives an insane amount of stats, so you can pretty much solve all your early game problems by just leveling up. Gear in the early game matters very little, as it provides percentage bonus based on our base stats, and our base stats are quite low in the early game. After level 40 or so, the level up progress will slow down by quite a bit, and you can probably clear chapter 10 by this point. This is when farming gear becomes very important. Tier 4 gears at chapter 10 is super important. Most gears start to give extra stats at tier 4. The tier 4 hat gives extra critical damage, and tier 4 bag gives 1000 defense. So when you hit chapter 10, I highly recommend farming your first tier 4 hat for Nonomi and first tier 4 bag on Tsubaki. These two students are absolutely necessary for clearing the EXP stage at lower level. Farming the higher level EXP stage will make you progress a lot faster, since we need to level a whole bunch of other students for the boss raids. Now let's talk about some important game mechanics we need to know. First thing is the type counter. In Blue Archive, attack and armor are divided into 3 colors, red, yellow, and blue. When we attack red armor with red damage, it deals 2 times the damage, but if we use yellow, it will only deal 50%. So the damage difference is 4 times between the right and wrong type of damage, and you absolutely do not want to bring students with the wrong attack type. The terrain bonus is not that big of a deal in the early game, but it becomes very important at higher difficulty raids when we have maxed out gear and skills. Another important thing to know is how skill cycle works. Let's say we have 6 students in the team. The order of how the skills show up is random every fight. So it's like we have a 6-card deck, and that's shuffled around at the start of every fight, and we can only hold up to 3 cards at a time. So when we use one skill, let's say skill C, it gets put to the bottom of the deck and we draw the next card. In order to use skill C again, we need to spend 3 more cards until we can draw skill C again. Most optimal teams in Blue Archive are built on this 4 skill cycle, and because the auto AI will use all 6 skills in order, it is far from optimal. The recommended level on each stage means the level required for auto clear. When manual play, we can easily beat stages that are 15 or 20 levels higher if we play on the optimal cycle. The next trick is very simple. It is quitting the game to restart a fight. Sometimes during a stage, things doesn't go your way. Either someone died or going over the 2-minute limit. You can simply quit the game and restart to do the same fight again. This saves you from doing the whole stage over again. The last important game mechanic is taunt and repositioning, which is basically Tsubaki and Serena. Taunt can cancel any enemy skill and silence them for the taunt duration. This is extremely important as a lot of the enemies have very dangerous skills. The Sushi Rangers in the Bounty Quest is a good example of this. Another good example is the boss in 6-5. It will launch a nuke when it's below half health, and using taunt will just completely stop the nuke. Another important thing is relocating your units. This is best done with Serena as her skill only costs 2 and it heals. In late game, we'll run into enemies with AoE skills that can potentially wipe our backline. so using Serena to move our tank up front and out of the way is very important. One of the new stages that's recently added in JP have us facing other Millennium students. An enemy Hibiki and Alice will insta-kill our backline if we don't move our tank away. So use this tactic wisely, it is very useful throughout the game. And here's a little extra. When we combine taunt and repositioning, we can actually force some enemies to move. Doing so will make our skills hit more targets and result in higher damage. And this one is only useful in one of the future boss raids, but there's actually quite a few other advanced techniques, and I will cover them in a future video. Next, let's go over the commissions and bounty quests, starting with base defense. This one is the most important in the early game as it drops EXP reports. The higher level stages have significantly better drops, so the earlier you can clear the better. I listed out all the good students for this stage, and Tsubaki, Nonomi, and Serena are pretty much mandatory. I highly recommend raising Nonomi's EX skill to level 3 first, as her EX skill is crucial for this stage. If you have Iori, then you can try the 5 student team. With one less backline, we can cycle the AoE skills faster, and the 2 best AoE yellow damage dealers right now are Nonomi and Iori. As for the credit stage, credits shouldn't be a problem until much later. The stage is just a straight DPS check, so bring your best blue damage dealers. Yellow damage dealers also work, so characters like Maki and Iori are both pretty good. Low cost units like Neru is also okay for faster skill cycle, and leveling Kotama EX skill will make this one a lot easier, but no need to try to beat this one early. The bounty quests can be pretty challenging for free-to-play players. The most important thing is to get the maximum attack buff by using the correct students from different schools. With the highest attack buff, just a single good red damage dealer can carry the stage. The top 4 carries are Aru, Hibiki, Hina, and Musuki. Tsubaki is the only viable tank since her taunt can cancel enemy skills. The rest of the team you can fill with any students from the appropriate school. Ideally red damage dealers, but honestly any student is fine for the attack buff, as long as you have a strong carry. For Overpass, Gehenna has a lot of red damage dealers, so it should be pretty easy. Also Chinatsu is a pretty good healer from Gehenna, so she's also good here. Overpass drops EX skill disc and is the most important one to beat, so try to go as high as possible, but don't worry if you can't beat the last few maps. The drop rate here is pretty bad, and our main source of skill disc is the raid shop. Desert and Classroom are both kinda difficult depending on your roster. In the early game, we don't actually have the resource to use the high tier skill notes and materials, so no need to push too hard on these 2 stages. Next, let's quickly go over how to climb arena. Depending on the server, your arena might or might not be super competitive. There's a large amount of pyros for reaching high ranks in arena, so climbing to the top is important. The meta team for the first iteration of arena is double tank, Hibiki and Serena backline, and 2 snipers. If you don't have the meta students, you can substitute with students like Nonomi and try to kill the enemy backlines. Due to the random nature of the arena, a subpar team can beat the top meta team with enough luck, so just keep trying and you'll eventually climb. Most arenas are filled with bots, so you should get a good chunk of pyros even if you don't reach the number 1 spot. For the last part of the video, let's go over crafting and the shop. Here is the simple crafting guide. Sum it up, we want to craft furnitures first to fill up the comfort value in cafe. After that, I recommend doing copper and radiant as those 2 are the most valuable. Or do shiny, gold, or platinum if you didn't get the previous 2 options. The extra unlock is terrible in the early game. In very late game, we can dump useless resources into extra unlocks and trade them for purple tier items, but that's a couple months away, so not relevant for now. For the credit shop, I highly recommend buying the skill materials on the bottom every day. In the first few months, we'll be short on skill materials pretty much all the time, especially the tier 2 materials. So definitely buy all tier 2 materials every day for the first month of playing. Weapon enhancement stone is also worth buying. The shop is pretty much the only place we can get a lot of them besides events and raids. As for the Eligma shop, Eligma usage is a topic worth a whole video on its own. For the purpose of this video, I'll just list out the 3 units that's most beneficial for all players. The most important one is raising Serena to 2 stars. This one helps a ton in clearing early game maps. If you want to be super competitive in PvP, raising Serena to 3 star is also okay. So is raising Tsubaki. 3 star Tsubaki with tier 4 bag is just unkillable in pretty much all PvE content. And 4 star Tsubaki is just unkillable even in arena. At the very least, I recommend raising Tsubaki to 3 star. She's also useful in raids later, so it's a good investment. Lastly, we got Kotama. She recently got added in raid shop on JP, but that's a very long time from now. At 3 star, Kotama gives extra attack buff for the entire team, which is crucial for competitive raiding. Whether or not to raise her to 3 star is up to you, but I recommend doing it because she is used in literally every boss raid. For the PvP shop, the only thing you should buy there are the AP potions. At the very early level, buying a few gold tier reports is also okay for quickly raising new students, but for the most part you'd rather buy AP and level up. All the characters sold in PvP shops are pretty bad, but if you are really lacking on red damage, buying Saya fragments and get her to 5 star is also not too bad. And that's it for this video. If you have any questions on Blue Archive, ask questions in my Discord is the best way to get detailed answers. Link to Discord is in the video description. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.